In this video, we're going to do the following problem. Use the quadratic formula to solve. And the equation we're going to solve is 4k times the binomial k plus 6 is equal to 6. So this problem asks us to use the quadratic formula. So let's go ahead and remind ourselves of what the quadratic formula is. And I have it written down over here. The quadratic formula gives us a formula for solving an equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. And the solutions that we'll get, that is the values for x that will make that statement true, are x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And there's a couple of things to note here. One of them is that we're solving a quadratic, and we're going to have a term that has a square for our x. The other one to note is that one side of the equation needs to be equal to 0. That is, we need to manipulate our equation ahead of time so that we have it in this form where one side is equal to 0. And then the other one to note is that we're going to get two different solutions. One when we add the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and one when we subtract the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And that's so long as b squared minus 4ac is not equal to 0, because if it is equal to 0, then adding it and subtracting it from the opposite of b won't have any different effects. Okay, so let's go back to our original problem, and the first thing we'll note is that our problem is not in the form that we need it to be in order to use the quadratic formula. So we'll go ahead and start manipulating this equation to put it into a format that we can use. So the first thing we'll do is we'll distribute. We get 4k squared plus 24k, and that's going to be equal to 6. We still don't have one side equal to 0, so the next thing we need to do is subtract 6 from both sides, and then we end up with 4k squared plus 24k minus 6 is equal to 0. And now, when we think about using the quadratic formula, we need to think about identifying the different values of a and b and c. So let's do that. A is going to be equal to 4 because it's the coefficient of the squared term. B is going to be equal to 24, and c is going to be equal to negative 6, because in the formula we thought of it as being plus b, and here we're subtracting a number, so we need to think of it as the negative of that number. So then our solutions for k are going to be equal to negative b, which is negative 24, plus or minus the square root of 24 squared minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is negative 6, and all of this is going to be divided by 2a. So now our job is to simplify. So we have negative 24 plus or minus the square root. If I square 24, I get 576, and I just did that using my calculator. And then I'm going to subtract 4 times 4 times negative 6. So I'm going to subtract negative 96, and that's all going to be divided by 2 times, I just now realized that in that previous expression I didn't substitute a value for a in the denominator, so I'll do that this time. So we get 2 times 4. So this is negative 24 plus or minus the square root of 576 minus negative 96. That's 576 plus 96. Using my calculator, I find out that that is 672, and then we're going to divide by 2 times 4, which is 8. So now we have a square root that we need to simplify, and I'm going to use a process of finding the prime factorization of 672. So I know that it's divisible by 2 because it ends in an even digit, and 2 goes into 6 3 times, 2 goes into 7 3 times, leaving me with a remainder of 1, and 2 goes into 12 6 times. And now 336, I'm going to divide that by 2 again. I know it's divisible by 2 because it's even. So we get 2 times 2 goes into 3 1 time. I have a remainder of 1. 2 goes into 13 6 times with a remainder of 1. And 2 goes into 16 8 times. And again, we get an even result, so that's also going to be divisible by 2. And 2 goes into 16 8 times, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. 84 is divisible by 2. 2 goes into 84 42 times. And we can keep going here. 2 goes into 42 2 times, and we get a remainder, or it goes in 21 times. And 21 is going to be 3 times 7. So that means that I can rewrite 672 as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2's times 3 times 7. So we'll do that over here. K is going to be equal to negative 24 plus or minus the square root of 2 to the 5th times 3 times 7, and I can check on my calculator and see that I really do get to 672. And then we need to divide that by 8, and now we can see that we can simplify this square root by writing it as 2 squared times 2 squared times 2 times 3 times 7, and that's going to be divided by 8, and we end up with negative 24 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared times the square root of 2 squared times the square root of 2 times 3 times 7, and that's going to be divided by 8. So we get K is equal to negative 24 plus or minus, and now when I square and square root, those are opposite operations, so I get 2 times the square root of 2 times 3 times 7, which eventually I'll multiply that back together again. It's going to be 6 times 7, which is 42. So I get K is equal to negative 24 plus or minus 4 times the square root of 42 divided by 8. And now what I have here is a fraction. And one of the things we like to do with fractions is we like to write them in simplest form. So when my fraction has more than one term in the numerator and I can't, or the denominator, and I can't combine those together, the tool that I need to use to simplify my fraction is to factor. So I can factor out a negative 4 here, and I'll end up with 6 plus or minus, actually let's factor out a positive 4. I think that'll make things easier in the long run. So we'll factor out a 4, those are both divisible by 4, and I get negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 42, and that's going to be divided by 8, and these both have a common factor of 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, 8 divided by 4 is 2, so we end up with negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 42 divided by 2. And if I needed to write this as two separate answers, I would write one of my answers as k is equal to -6 plus the square root of 42 divided by 2. And the other answer that I'd write is k is equal to -6 minus the square root of 42 divided by 2. And that's our final answer. I hope you found this helpful.